Well, at this point, if you've come from the last 3 videos and you've heard my jokes at the beginning of the videos, I'm not going to make one of those anymore, but because this is actually really fun to do in an entire set. But I think I'll probably stop after this one. So what we're talking about in this video is intervals. Intervals ask a very simple question, which is how many notes are in between two notes? And the starting point for this is the scale. And I'll use my favorite and, in my view, the most perfect scale, the C major scale. We already know from the last video that a scale has 8 notes in it, and you can label them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 1. So what's the intervals between each of the notes of the scale? That's pretty simple, right? I mean, if there's 1 and 2, what's the interval between them? The second. Wow, revolutionary. How about 1 and 4? I bet we can't figure that out. Well, it's a fourth. So, great. The only exception to this is 1 and the octave above it. We just call that an octave, and we notate it as an 8VE. So, I mean, that's great, right? Wow, intervals are done. Let's all go home. Thank you so much for watching. But no, it's a bit more complicated. So this is, well, pretty much how intervals work in C major, and only in C major. But can we go beyond that? And that's when, if you've heard terms like minor intervals, major intervals, augmented and diminished intervals, that's when they come in. Now, once again, there are 2 situations and only 2 situations where intervals may be relevant. First is when you're playing notes together. So this is the second, and then so on and so forth. Now, in technical terms, we call that a harmonic interval. And the other situations when you're playing a note side by side, so one after the other. For example, between a C and a D, if we play the 2 notes side by side, that's a second. That's a melodic interval. So just remember that at the back of your head, it will never come out, it's fine. So just notes together, harmonic, notes one after another, melodic. Now, how can we use this? How is this information useful? That's useful once we transpose this to other keys. And of course, in order to do that, we need to treat C major as perfect, as it truly is. And it's very easy. We just call the 4th, 5th, and octave perfect, and we call the rest of its intervals major. So the second becomes a major second, third becomes a major third, fourth becomes perfect fourth, so on and so forth. You can read. And now the question is why? Why do we care? Now remember, at the beginning of this video, I said that intervals are the space between notes. And on a scale, that's pretty easy, right? Between 1 and 2, the interval is a second. Great. But the real conception of intervals doesn't just look at the distance between 2 notes on a scale. It looks at the distance between 2 notes on an actual keyboard. So for example, a major second has 1, 2, 3 notes in its span. A perfect fifth has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 notes. The major seventh has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I realize I can't highlight the cursor on OBS, but you should be looking at my keyboard here and how I'm tracking notes, because this is going to be really, really important for the rest of this video. So essentially, the interval asks how many notes on the keyboard are the 2 notes apart. Terrible grammar, you get the idea. When is this relevant? That's relevant when you see an interval that kind of looks like something in C major, but it's not. Like that. Now, what's this? Like, how do we make this out? I mean, I've labeled it as a minor third, but how do we know? Well, first of all, let's count how many notes there are in between just by looking at the staff. There's 1, 2, 3, F, G, A. That looks like a major third, right? It's kind of the same. But a major third has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes in between, whereas this third, this F to A flat third, has 1, 2, 3, 4. Because it looks like a third and it has 1 less note in between than the major third, we call it a minor third. So major is bigger than minor by 1 note. That's pretty easy. The same thing applies to sevenths. So the major 7th has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 notes in between, whereas the minor 7th has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 notes in between. So it looks like a 7, and it's one note less than a major 7th, so it's a minor 7th. Pretty straightforward. Now we can do this with any two notes. Let's say we can do this. Like, I mean, so this is a B, and this I shall notate it as a G sharp. So how many notes are in between this? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 notes in between. This looks like a major 6, but it's not, right? Is it? Well, let's look at the major 6th. How many notes are in between? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this, even though it's got a weird sharp over here, is actually a major 6th. That's how the whole major and minor intervals thing works. You compare it with the perfect scale that is C major, and you see which one it looks like, and then is it any more or less? Wow, the grammar is so bad. Yeah, so does the interval have more or less steps than the C major equivalent? Now, all that's fine and dandy, but we've still missed the huge elephant in the room, which is the perfect intervals. Why do we call them perfect intervals? What makes them so special that they're not major intervals? Well, the real reason we call them perfect is because there are intervals very near to the perfect intervals, which are imperfect and very, very much so. In fact, between the perfect 4th and the 5th lies the devil's interval. I didn't name it that, you can Google it yourself. The medieval people thought that you were literally summoning the devil when you heard this interval. And it sounds like this. Like, ew, whoa, what's that? That's a sound you never want to hear. Well, I mean, there are exceptional circumstances, but in traditional music writing, we avoid this, be it as a harmonic interval or as a melodic interval. So you don't want to hear this, and you don't want to hear this. Both are bad. Both are summoning the devil. It's the worst thing ever. If you want to look at the terminology I've left here, the augmented 4th and the diminished 5th, you can give it a Google, but it's not that important. All we need to know is that between the 4th, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes, and if you raise the 6th note to just one note above it, you've hit the devil's interval. That's not what you want. And for the perfect 5th, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 notes in between. If you drop the highest note such that there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 notes in between, then you have the tritone, the devil's interval, the one that summons bad things. Yeah, same thing. So that's the interval that you must avoid, be it playing together or playing side by side, harmonic or melodic. No tritones, no devils. That's bad for music, something like that. Now, so that leaves the perfect octave. Why is the octave perfect? What's the interval that makes the octave not perfect? Well, it's a bit more complicated, but in this case, it's the minor second. So, the second is C to D. How many notes are between the second? I'll just go through this exercise again. 1, 2, 3. 3 notes in between the major second. So how about the minor second? That's one less than the major second. 1, 2. And if you heard me click that, you've heard how it sounds. And I'll just let it play in its full glory. Ew, that's a sound you never want to hear. So that's the other interval you want to avoid. And the reason why the octave is called a perfect octave is because any more and then the octave gives you the minor second, except that it's now one octave higher. Exactly the same thing. So that's the interval you want to avoid, but only in a harmonic sense. So you can play the minor second together. Well, you can't, play the minor second together. That sounds so bad. But you can play it side by side. And then you get jaws. So this is only a rule for harmonic intervals and not for melodic intervals. And now I'll just conclude with one last thing. Let's look at the scale. Now the scale is actually made up of intervals. They're all made out of seconds, right? So in between first and the second note, that's a major second, right? Between the second and the third note, that's 1, 2, 3, 3 steps, major second. 3 and 4, 1 step, 2 steps. So sorry, 1, 2, I can count. That's a minor second. So remember last video we talked about how the 7 really wants to go to the 1. That's because there's a minor second, or what we call a semitone, in between them. If in a minor scale, so I'm gonna move this perfect C major scale to A minor, we can count the intervals in the same way. So A to B, 1, 2, 3, major second. C to B, minor second. But if we get from G to A, that's a major second, which doesn't really want to go up as much. So that's the application of intervals to scales for you. And with that in mind, that's the end of this really technical, and I hope it hasn't been boring, video. We talked about 3 things. First, we talked about intervals in a scale, and I'm going to bring this back to C major. So yes, intervals in a scale. It's very straightforward here, but from C major, we can apply the very same intervals to every other 2 notes by just comparing the C major equivalent, how many steps do we have in between, to the interval at hand. So if this looks like a major third in C major, then well, how many steps does it have? C major has 5, this has 4, so it's minor. We also know of the 2 intervals to avoid. We avoid augmented fourths and diminished fifths because that's the worst interval ever. You don't want to have that either in a harmonic interval or a melodic interval. And finally, the minor second and augmented octave. This is a rule that only applies to harmonic intervals. So lots and lots of technical stuff to digest. Go play with it yourself, go play some tritones to scare your friends. And that will be it for this video. Thank you so much for listening in. Thank you so much for all your attention up to this point, and have a wonderful, wonderful day ahead. Take care.